So I'm convinced that there's really two types of people that own the AR platform. You have the people that are brand new, that have heard all about this gun and they want their first rifle to be the AR. They've heard of how customizable and modular it is, and they can do all kinds of stuff with it, and they think that will be the perfect starting spot. And then there's the other side of it, the people that have already bought them, built them, they have a few of them, and even though they respect the platform, they just want something more and or different. And that's what we're going to talk about today as I give you the 7 best AR alternatives that are on the market. Now, this video is in no way to talk bad about the AR platform. You have to remember that that gun was designed in the 50s by Eugene Stoner, which was the AR-10. Now, of course, they ran into some financial trouble. They sold their rights off to Colt, and Colt, started producing their own AR-15. And interestingly enough, they actually still own the trademark to the AR-15 name, so no other company can use that. But of course, other companies have copied this design all the way up to modern M4s used by our military. Now, while the AR-10 was turned down in favor of the M14 in the 50s, then in the 60s in Vietnam, they actually replaced the M14 with the AR-15 style gun, 223-556 rifle. So this is a revolutionary gun, and you got to think, when Eugene Stoner designed this gun in the 50s, you're only like 10 years removed from World War II, where we were using M1 Garands as our standard service rifle. That is a huge jump in technology. So, super forward thinking, amazing rifle, but if you want something more, something different, and sometimes something better, I'm actually going to tell you why I think these guns might be a better option, what they offer and the advantages over maybe an AR, and we'll kind of talk about some of the interesting facts associated with some of these guns. So if you like this type of content and you want to see more reviews from me, consider subscribing. You could also become a part of the SHOT team and join us on Patreon, or join the channel right here and gain access to some really awesome perks. Big thanks to you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, since I've been holding this one for a while, we'll go ahead and talk about this one. This is the SCAR 16. Now, of course, SOCOM is kind of synonymous with the SCAR, and even though the SCAR platform did not take over for the M4, it still does offer some advantages over that platform. The first one being a piston-driven gun. This is highly debated in the community between almost everybody, whether, direct impingement or piston-driven guns are the best. But there is one thing I think that's undeniable in the community, and that is pistons are super reliable. So is direct impingement, to be honest with you, but this system is much cleaner than direct impingement. On a traditional AR where you have the tube that comes back that's attached to the gas block, any of that excess gas just kind of gets thrown into the back of the receiver here, where with a piston-driven gun, that doesn't happen. It's able to be regulated in there, and a lot of these guns do have gas regulators as well, so you can kind of control how much gas, whether you're running suppressed or unsuppressed. Now, unfortunately, with the SCAR's case, you don't really have that much regulation there with that gas. You have basically regular and adverse conditions. These guns are typically overgassed because they want them to run super reliably, but that is something that can be fixed. We also have sights that are built into the gun. They kind of lay parallel with the receiver there, so you can fold those up and out of the way. Now, another advantage that you have with this gun is the way the bolt is designed. So with a traditional AR, you're going to have to work the bolt right here, okay? And that, of course, is going to break your line of sight. We can operate the gun from the side on a traditional AR if the bolt is locked back to the rear, of course. But at some point, you're going to have to work this charging handle. Well, with a gun like the SCAR 16, we can actually operate this with our non-dominant hand. If we come back to this side, it's ambidextrous, so I can operate the gun just like this as well. I don't do enough left-handed shooting. That's something I definitely need to work on this year, but regardless, that is something you can do with this platform and the side charging handle. Another benefit of this gun specifically is that it does take PMags. So PMags are the most common magazine and one of the most reliable magazines out there. And they're also super cheap. So if your AR alternative doesn't take PMags, and if it's some kind of proprietary magazine, that really kind of sucks. And I don't know that I would consider those the best AR alternatives. So again, while some of these rifles that I'm going to show you are going to be more money than a standard AR, things like magazines, you don't want to add extra cost to that. And that's something that SCAR 16 offers you is, yes, it does have SCAR specific mags like these aluminum ones right here, kind of match the gun and the 308 version, but it will utilize PMags as well. And to be quite honest with you, even though this gun did not replace the M4, on a lot of levels, it is a beast. And while you may get a little bit more recoil with this gun compared to some of the other ARs out there, and it's going to be a little bit heavier because it's a piston gun, this thing will run no matter what conditions you're talking about. So for most of us, it's going to be a really good option. And plus there's a lot of R&D that's gone into these guns because of them being associated with SOCOM. So on the regular civilian side, we get the benefits of that. And while these things don't come free, you still get a gun that you know is going to be super reliable. One additional thing that you will get with this instead of a traditional AR is the side folding stock. Now, of course, you know, regular ARs are going to utilize a buffer system. There are companies that have made side folding mechanisms to work with the AR and the buffer system that they utilize, but that's only for transportation. So like, for instance, this gun can fire with that stock folded just like that. It can clear the ejection chamber right there as well. With an AR, you can't do that. In order for the gun to reliably operate, that stock has to be folded out just like that. Now you may be thinking, what the heck are you doing with that old gun? Well, if you don't like old guns and, you know, World War II specifically, I don't know that there's a lot that I can do to change your mind about it. But there's some things that this gun has that none of the guns in this room, or no modern guns, has that's super important to me, and I think may be to a lot of people. Talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about some of the basics with this gun. Now, of course, this was designed at a time where we needed more guns, right? Every manufacturer almost in the United States and every person in the United States that was capable was in the war effort to some extent. You know, General Motors and IBM and all these companies were just helping out, and it seems like a much different time. You know, from my research, and I've done a lot of World War II research, it was one of those things that brought this country together, especially after Pearl Harbor, and nobody was thinking, oh God, we shouldn't be making more guns. They were thinking, we need to pump these things out. And actually, this is the most produced rifle on the American side during the war. We have a long stroke piston system, very similar to the M1 Garand. That's about the only thing it shares, although it does have a rotating bolt back here. And then, of course, the extractor is attached to the bolt head. We have a side charging handle right there. We have adjustable elevator type sights here in the rear. Now, keep in mind, there were so many mixed and matched parts and changes to the platform. And then, you know, after the war, of course, there's people that put together parts kits. So, you know, these things are very unique in a lot of ways, the way they were put back together or the changes that were made. Actually, I put a Korean War stock that they had from that time because I thought it actually looked better than the original one that came on the gun. We have barrel bands up here, of course, again, another popular thing to increase our accuracy and obviously hold these handguards together. Wood, you know, is not going to be as tough as your polymers and even, you know, your steels that we have today. So sometimes in some conditions you will get flexing, you'll get moisture that gets into these, you'll get swelling. Again, there is a reason that we got away from using wood, but one thing I will say is these things are beautiful and sometimes, like in the case of this one with notches in here and all that, you kind of get a little bit of a story told with this gun, and it's just absolutely beautiful the way it's worn in. Another advantage with this gun is the recoil. Now, the AR platform isn't known for having a bunch of recoil, but if you have somebody that's just really sensitive to recoil, this is like putting a 357 Magnum downrange with a full 18-inch barrel. It is so minimal as far as the recoil, and these things are super accurate. Now, here's the one place that I've had the biggest issue with these guns, and that's the magazines. So you may want to reserve your wartime mags for the safe and use some reproduction magazines for these. 20 rounds too, by the way, which is pretty cool at a time like this when this one was designed. Now, I mentioned that these guns have something that none of these modern guns have, and that is a story. They have history and things that are attached to them. So if that doesn't mean anything to you, then that probably doesn't excite you. To me, it is exciting. When I hold this gun, and especially when I shoot this gun and I think about who could have held this gun, you know, did it save their life? Did they use it in the Pacific theater? Did they use it in the European theater? You know, most likely this gun was used somewhere, but to what extent, I have no idea. So, and maybe it wasn't used. Maybe, yeah, I have no idea. But that's kind of the cool part about this, is you can do research and you can find little things. By the way, this one is a 1943 Inland. There was like 10 different manufacturers of the M1 carbine out there, 9 of which made a lot of guns. But the history attached to these things, how soft shooting they are. You can still get 30 carbine, by the way, and it is more expensive for sure, but this is one of the coolest rifles you can own and a really great AR alternative if you don't need something for self-defense, I would say. Even though you could use this for self-defense, you want something with a light or a laser or any number of things like that as far as maybe, let's just say, home defense. This isn't the best option, but if you want something as far as a training tool, and maybe even a self-defense rifle that you could keep, you know, in your home for daytime use or when you have plenty of light, then this may be a good option. But the history attached to this thing just makes it so freaking cool. The next best AR alternative comes out of the Czech Republic. This is the CZ Bren 2 MS. And interestingly enough, the Bren name actually comes from the ZBV-26, which was a light machine gun that was developed in the early 20s. Now, the British actually modified the VZ-26 into what later became the Bren gun. So all of these different countries were actually holding trials to introduce new light machine guns, better technology after World War I. And of course, the timing couldn't have been better because that was, you know, what we know now as the interwar period. So the development of some of these guns was actually crucial. And of course, Nazi Germany took over the VZ-26 and relabeled the MG-26. So that's where the name comes from. And this gun specifically is a derivative of the CZ Bren 805 series. And so they've made a number of improvements, and a couple of things that are important for our conversation here is, why is it better than the AR, or why is it a better alternative? Well, first thing I want to talk about is an adjustable gas system. I really like the way they actually lock this in place on the Bren. So you just have a little lever that's right behind the gas plug there, and also you can take it out super easily, by the way. So you don't want to rotate that all the way down. And so basically just by pushing down, you can regulate the amount of gas that is in there. We have sling swivels up at the front. We also have dual at the back of the receiver here. This one, of course, is a pistol with the brace that I have on here and the angled foregrip. We have, again, a side charging handle, and we can move that to the right-hand side if you would like to. We also have our magazine release, which is ambidextrous, our bolt release, which is only on the left-hand side of the gun, but when you look a little closer, we actually have a bolt release that is forward of the trigger in the trigger guard. I know some people have said, you know, this is kind of a dangerous concept because it is close to the trigger. While I do understand that and things can happen, generally speaking, you can drop that pretty easily. Whenever you have a loaded mag in there, it's not going to drop so easily now because it's an empty mag, but you can press that down forward. And honestly, you could, in theory, kind of use your thumb and come back and still not necessarily break grip with your strong hand, your dominant hand, so you can still have your sights on target. You could work that bolt, and you could move that bolt forward all just by, utilizing your dominant or non-dominant hand. Or you could press down with your finger, your trigger finger, just like that if you want to. Just remember that whenever you utilize this, that you keep your hand out of the way of that charging handle. It's not reciprocating, but when that thing goes forward, it will slice you there. Another thing that we have here is integrated sights into the rail. These are steel sights too. This is actually a really, really nice set of sights coming straight from the factory. We also have a modular handguard. So we have a couple of M-LOK slots on the side, one on the bottom. So you don't have a ton of rail space up there, but you can actually change this forward section if you would like. I put an ASR brake on here, by the way, too, to kind of be consistent with the Omega 36M that I have. We have the shell deflector, we have the safety, which again is ambidextrous. Pistol grip is actually a really, really comfortable design. They did a great job. I mean, when it comes to just naturally pointing guns, this is seriously amongst one of the best. And all you really have to do, to be quite honest with you, is go into a gun shop that has one, operate the bolt, and you will see and feel the difference in this gun compared to a traditional AR. The other nice part about this gun is that you have multiple chamberings. So you have the 7.62 by 39, you have 223, 5.56, different barrel lengths that you can go with, interchangeable barrels, swappable forends, and when it comes to the pricing of these, yes, it's going to be more than something like a low to mid-grade AR, but when you start talking about high-end ARs, they're upwards of $2,000, sometimes more. So this is about in line with those high-end ARs. And in my opinion, you get a little bit more bang for your buck with a gun like this. By the way, this lower is carbon fiber as well. Super easy to break down, super easy to keep clean too, which goes for pretty much all of these guns. And by the way, your charging handle actually doubles as a forward assist if needed. Now, as promised, there's going to be a mixture of some mid-range to really high prices and everywhere in between. We're going to go again on the high end really quick. If you decide to go with something like this, the only way, in my opinion, to truly appreciate something like the gun I'm showing you right here, the B&T APC Pro, or even the SCAR 16, is to handle them and to get them out to the range. So I'll do the best that I can to kind of tell you why I think these guns are as much as they are. Now, I'm not justifying that in any means, but there are some things here that just make this gun specifically really like next level. If you're trying to get away from the whole AR scene and want something different, this might be a good option. So this is, again, the B&T APC Pro. We have a fully adjustable gas system. We also have what they utilize here is a mixture of Picatinny rail and M-LOK, keeping the overall design really sleek. So if you do a thumb over bore, no problem. We also have side charging handle. Most of your piston guns you're starting to see have the ability to have a side charging handle. Again, this is something that I definitely prefer. By the way, modular handguard, so we can swap that out if you want to. The newer versions of this gun, by the way, have the flush fitting ambidextrous charging handles too. This one will utilize regular PMags, which is, again, a good thing. Our bolt release, our magazine release, and our safety selector all are ambidextrous, so you can get them from both sides. Safety selector has a 45-degree throw, super easy to engage. And one difference on this gun from the stock to the controls to the gas system, this is a better gun in my opinion than the SCAR, and they're similar in price. That's just my opinion, but everything about this gun is better than the SCAR, including the trigger. They call it a two-stage trigger, but I think it's more like a single stage. It is incredible. Just a really slight pull, reset, boom. It is fantastic. Skeletonized flat face. One of the best stock triggers that I have ever used, second to none. We also have a better grip than what comes on the Scar. Now, another really cool thing that they've done, not only does B&T have a better stock design, first of all, than the Scar, simply, I mean, just one reason here is the side folding mechanism is easier to work, and when I deploy it like that, it locks into place. You can't do that really with the Scar because you have to do it, with so much force on the Scar that you could break the plastic tabs. Regardless, though, another cool feature that they have is actually a little buffer back here in the rear. So 5.56 isn't known for having a ton of recoil, but that little hydraulic buffer really helps to kind of slow down the bolt and slow down the violence of the gun under sustained recoil. I mean, this thing is super soft shooting, as close to a 22 as you're going to get right here in a full-length rifle. It really is impressive. And again, these things don't come cheap, but if you're looking for a high-end AR alternative, the B&T APC Pro is seriously amongst one of the best. Now let's bring it down a few notches and let's get some more cost-effective options in here that are still going to be really good AR alternatives, but of course they're going to be a little bit easier on your wallet too. The next best AR alternative that I want to mention here is the IWI X95. Now, the IDF actually started using the X95 in 2009, which is an improved version of the Tavor. Before that, they were using M4s over in Israel. Now, this gun overall is so much different than your M4s, than your ARs, because of one big thing, and I think that's kind of obvious, the size of it. Now, this is a bullpup design. I've talked about these rifles at length in several different versions, but when it comes to the bullpup world, I still think this is the best one out there. Certainly has one of the best triggers out there. And there's a couple of things about this gun specifically that I really like. Again, overall size. So if we're talking about a good home defense, maybe even like a truck gun or bug out bag type of rifle, this, like I said, may be a really good option because, again, it's overall short length. Now, one thing they did, and I just kind of took these off, is they now have removable rail covers. So you can expose all this Picatinny or you can cover it up. That's kind of up to you. I think the angled foregrip works the best on this gun. And because all the weight is in the rear, I can do just like this. This hand can be totally free. I could charge up the gun, work the bolt release, do everything I need to do, and the center of gravity on this gun, most of it is into my shoulder right here because I don't have excess weight out in front. And I mean, I could literally sit here for a long time and feel very comfortable. Side charging handle right here. Of course, there are conversion kits too where you can take these to 9mm if that's something you would like to do. Integrated sights right into the rail. Probably one of the better integrations that they actually do here on any rifle that I've used so far. You actually have a tritium vial up front to make it a little bit easier to see. Mine has since the light has burned out on this one for sure, so I need a replacement. Plenty of rail space up top. You can replace this kind of wild looking pistol grip with more of a traditional one if you would like. To me, I personally like the way the gun looks overall. It takes AR style mags. All your P mags will work. Super easy to clean and break down. You have a couple of pins and this whole thing will come out. This one has a cold hammer forged barrel, chrome lined barrel at that. And one thing that makes this really nice, and one of the popular things out there if you've used ARs for any amount of time, is muscle memory, which is a legitimate concern when you move to anything that's different than the AR platform. But this one is not as much of an adjustment as some of the other bullpups out there on the market, simply because my magazine release is ambidextrous, my safety selector is in a position that I'm kind of used to. So the biggest thing is just the magazines. So I release that mag, I pop it back in, and my bolt release is right behind the magazine release. And so once you get used to that, this is actually a super intuitive gun, overall short length. You don't have to worry about any kind of SBR on it, and it is a really, really good shooter. I noticed kind of a little bit more gas on this gun, especially when I've shot it suppressed. But overall, it is a really awesome and super reliable option. These aren't cheap, okay, so don't get the wrong impression there. But I have seen them on the used market for actually very reasonable prices. So it just really depends on where you go. Brand new, typically about 1,800 bucks. So again, they're up there with the high-end ARs. Now, this was actually the very first rifle I ever purchased. I thought it was the Scar, but now that I think about it, I actually purchased this one a couple of years before the Scar, maybe even 4 years before the Scar. And I had already had an AR before that, and I was like, you know, I like it. It's a cool gun. I respect them. Don't get the wrong impression. But I wanted something different, and so that again is why I'm making this video. So this was my first rifle I ever purchased, and again, I really love this thing. When it comes to bullpups, the X95 is still one of my favorites. Now here's a gun that's very interesting to me, because when I put it in most of my videos, they don't get a lot of traction, and I don't know if a lot of people just don't know about this gun, or maybe they do, they just kind of think, it's just whatever. I'm not sure, but again, when it comes to AR alternatives, this might be one that a lot of people want to gravitate towards, because all of the controls are the same. So you might be thinking, well, that kind of falls outside of your perimeter, or at least the standards that you set for this video, but it really doesn't. And so I'll tell you why here in a minute. But this is the SIG MCX Spear. So a couple of things that make this gun really interesting. First of all, this one's in 7.62 by 39. We of course have 7.62 by 51 or 308 and 5.56 by 45. So we have a variety of different calibers. You have SBRs, of course. You have different barrel lengths and stuff like that. We have our modular handguard. We have a 2-position adjustable gas system in here. You take the tip of a bullet, you can rotate that from side to side depending upon the conditions that you're in, or if you're, of course, running a suppressor. Now, one thing you will notice, we have Picatinny on the top, and then we have M-LOK everywhere else on the gun. So if we do something like this right here, we of course can do a thumb over bore. Now again, this is modular, so we can change this handguard out if you want to. One thing I really love about this gun too is the copper, kind of mixed copper coloration on the gun, very similar to the Scar and to the B&T 308. But it just looks really slick, man. I love this coyote brown that SIG uses here. But more than the coloration and some of the other features that this has is, you know, this was built off of the XM7. So essentially when the United States military was looking for their next generation weapon, they chose the SIG Sauer Spear, or XM7, to replace the M4. Of course, that gun is chambered in 277 Fury, which is a new round that SIG came out with in 2019. And technically, this is the 3rd generation of the MCX, and this one came out in 2022. So you have all of that R&D built into this platform, and we get the benefits of that on the civilian side. We have a short stroke gas system coming back here. And by the way, the 5.56 versions, 300 blackout, they all take standard magazines. So no worries there. Our magazine release is ambidextrous from side to side. Our bolt release right here on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, we actually have a lever where we can drop that bolt as well. And then of course, if you're used to the AR style controls, you're going to be used to this gun. I mean, really, the only thing you have is the addition of this lever right here, which makes it a little bit easier to drop and not have to break your grip or come to this side and do it. So it's a pretty intuitive design. Again, ambidextrous safety. I mentioned that because a lot of your baseline ARs do not have an ambi safety. You'll notice that most of these guns do, except for the X95 that I just showed y'all, and then a much better pistol grip than what you're going to find on a traditional AR. Again, piston gun, so we have the side folding stock just like that, and for transport, or if you want something as a truck gun or a bug out bag gun, or rifle, something like that, it's going to make it a lot easier to actually utilize. And then we have our steel inserts for our QD slots here at the back of the receiver. I have an M-LOK one up front, and then we also have them in the stock right here. This wire stock is what comes on the gun stock. These are super expensive actually, and while you don't get a bunch of adjustability or even the length of pull adjustability there, I find for me it is pretty much perfect right where it is. I just set my optic where I wanted it, and the thing works pretty good for me. So overall, I think, if you want a gun that you get AR controls, but you're going to get again that kind of R&D from the military trials, and you can kind of say, hey, I have the civilian version of the United States military's rifle, the XM7. Of course, you can flex a little bit there, but overall, man, this is just a great defensive rifle. And again, chambered in 7.62x39, 300 blackout, 308, or 5.56, so you have a lot of options there, and a quick change barrel if that's something that you want to utilize. Now you may be wondering, why the heck are you showing a lever gun on a best AR alternatives? And there's a reason this is last, okay? This is not the best option out there, but if you need to fulfill your cowboy niche, but you still want to have modern conveniences, this may be a good option. Now the Henry Big Boy X may be another good option that I've reviewed here as well. But the reason I say that is because both of these guns offer, updated conveniences while still giving you, again, that kind of cowboy feel, and the technology in a lever gun is super reliable for the most part. So reliability really isn't an issue. You have a variety of different chamberings. So while they may not be as good as 5.56 and 308, it really depends on the application for you and what you're utilizing. If we're saying, hey, within 100 rounds or within 100 yards, that's my max, that's where I'm going to be at, again, this could be a good option. We have a Picatinny rail up top with the ghost ring sight, and then we have the standard bead in the front. I'm gonna, kind of call in and tag team that Henry every once in a while too, because that one is drilled and tapped and it has a fiber optic sight. But either way, we can mount a variety of different optics or scopes back here. So again, modern conveniences, that's something that modern shooters want. Our M-LOK spots on both guns. Now this one is a little bit better. It's got the steel inserts, of course, but it's also flat against the rifle, so any accessory you put on this gun should actually be a little bit more flush fitting, or if you need a solid place there to kind of mount up the gun, you have a nice flat surface as opposed to a round one. We have really awesome stippling up here. We have a stainless steel barrel, tube, all of that stuff. Receiver, it's all stainless steel. So again, we have a rugged design. It's not like this thing is going to, fall apart on you in adverse conditions. Again, the AR platform is known for being super reliable, and I'm not going to show you a gun that isn't as reliable, at least as the AR. Now, of course, the big elephant in the room is the fact that we have to work a lever with each shot. So it's something you can actually get really quick at doing. I've been kind of practicing that too, because when I first started shooting lever guns like a year ago, maybe even not that far back, I tend to drop this down and then kind of take shots, and yeah, no, that doesn't work. So anyways, kind of been practicing that. This one is a side loader only. I do like the Henry because I can remove the tube, which this one's removable as well, but I can also load from the tube on the Henry. This one you cannot do that. So this one has a side loading gate only. So yes, it's going to be slower to reload. So You know, when we're talking about self-defense, this is a gun you could utilize, but if you ever have to reload, that's where you're either going to want to have another one of these or something with a box magazine, which again is why I've showed you all of these guns up until this point that at least have those things. They're reliable box magazines. They're going to be as quick as the AR platform in case you ever had to reload in a self-defense situation, because that's what I'm primarily focused on. But with all of that said, this gun can be an absolute awesome self-defense gun. Of course, it's better for like a hunting type of gun. This one's chambered in .44 Magnum. So if you need to take deer or anything like that, you could absolutely do that, and it still has some really awesome modern conveniences. So, not the best AR alternative, not the best self-defense gun, but one you could take game with, and you could use it as self-defense. You know, you just got to know your limitations with this one. But I think it could be a good AR alternative for some people out there. Not the best one, but definitely one to consider. So there you go, man. There are the 7 best AR alternatives, at least for this video. There's a lot more guns we could go into that I could cover. And of course, I want to hear from y'all. If there's any other AR alternatives that you think are better or that you think would fit nicely into a part 2, make sure you leave those things down below and let me know what your favorite AR alternative is. And again, if you like what I do, consider subscribing and or joining the Shot Squad and become a part of the community, and you get some really awesome perks while supporting the channel at the same time. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one, and as always, hold them down.